Hello everybody, it's Retro again, coming at you with a brand new video, and today I thought I would go over the various games that I like to play, the games that I grew up with, and, share my thoughts on them. And this is going to be a very experimental video on my part, but I think it's just the thing I need to get more comfortable with video editing and content creation in general, and I put a lot of effort into this video, gathering all the recording and stuff like that, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But without further ado, I'm going to get right into it.
Against all the evil that hell can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce, we will send unto them only you. Rip and tear until it is done.
Starting off with one of my favorite FPS games of all time. Honestly, it's probably one of the best FPS games ever made, and it's just an objective statement if we're all being honest here, is Doom Eternal. I gotta say, Doom Eternal was a game I discovered while I was in the army, and what's crazy about that is I completely fell out of gaming for the most part while I was in the army. However, whenever I got my first gaming laptop, I was out in the military, and this was one of the first games I played on it. Now, what I can say about it is, despite me having limited time and me always being exhausted whenever I did have free time, this was the easiest game to pick up and play. Its gameplay loop is addicting. It's like crack. The intro to the game is awesome. It pumps you up. It's got that slow pan over Mars, and it's got the dialogue from King Novik pretty much giving you that exposition, as well as that badass soundtrack. It gets you pumped up, and it really does a great job at leaning you into that power fantasy of being the Doomslayer and crushing the various demons in the game. Every single weapon feels useful, from the plasma rifle to the minigun to even the basic combat shotgun with its utility as the grenade launcher and then the automatic. Although I think we can all relate to this when I say that we never really use that once we get the super shotgun. Nevertheless, this game knows exactly what it's doing. The cutscenes, badass, super quick, really just there to get you pumped up to keep playing. Some of my favorites are whenever you blow a hole into the surface of Mars, or just a number of cutscenes where you disrupt the con maker's plans. But yeah, if you haven't played this game yet, I don't know what you're doing. You need to get on this train right away. It's life-changing. It, in my opinion, is the best shooter ever made. As far as flaws go, we gotta be honest, we gotta include the flaws. There's no such thing as a perfect game. This may be one of the best, but getting stuck on objects when you're in the middle of fast gameplay is excruciating. It is the most frustrating experience ever. And for a game where movement is such a high priority, you would think they would do a better job at keeping the arenas clear of just random hard to spot rubble or just invisible barriers, invisible walls. But unless you have the arenas and stuff that you fight the demons in memorized pretty well, I find that I run into these obstacles quite a bit. And yeah, it's really annoying. And also, I think that the experience on controller, just console in general, is pretty much inferior to playing with a keyboard and mouse. So I feel like if you played this game with a controller, you're getting a worse experience. And honestly, I can't really recommend it the same way that I would with a keyboard and mouse. Not that it's a bad game in general. I think it's probably great regardless, and you could definitely get good enough with a controller, but I definitely think you're getting a lesser experience if you play the game like that. But yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Doom Eternal. I'm gonna get right into the next game.
There always seems to be more and more civilization. I want to get back in the open country of the West, or what's left of it, but even that ain't the way I remember it.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that needs no introduction, although I still gave it one because it definitely deserves it. Where to even begin with a game such as Red Dead 2? For starters, it's one of the most immersive games ever made. The story is a 10 out of 10. The game's open world is the perfect dose of chaos, as I'm about to illustrate to you guys. Arthur, one of the best characters ever. His story feels deeply personal, and it takes full advantage of the medium. I personally believe that no other medium medium other than gaming could tell Arthur's story the way it is presented to us. I'm not going to get into any spoilers in this video, but just know that if you ever make the decision to play through Red Dead 2 from start to finish, you're in for one hell of a ride. Every line of dialogue feels impactful, it's well written, it's witty, it's punchy, it's got this trademark Rockstar cynicism that you start to notice more and more as you play more Rockstar games. There isn't a game that takes advantage of the medium of gaming quite like Red Dead 2 does. Only other games that can really compare is probably Far Cry 3, where the gameplay and the story all lend itself so well to the medium of gaming that it can be described as a masterpiece. Now, despite all these positive traits, there is still one glaring issue with Red Dead 2. Well, it's one big issue, however, it leads to a bunch of smaller issues, and that is chaos. The open world is absolutely chaotic. It can lead to some horrendous moments where the game just turns on you. At least that's how it feels to me, or it just completely screws up your gameplay, and there's not really much you can do about it. You know, it's a very janky game at times. However, that same chaos is what leads to encounters such as this, where as I was recording for this video, I tried to do a stranger mission, the one in Rhodes, where you help a doctor get his carriage back as it was stolen from him, and it led me down a rabbit hole of chaos that well, it drove me crazy. It ended off with some of the coolest gameplay I've ever had in my life, you know? So I go to him, I start this mission, I go to the guys, and right off the bat, for some reason, Arthur would not draw his freaking pistol. It was driving me bonkers. So I took some shots, whatever, I managed to clear the place. And then I go for the carriage. I start riding the carriage and I call my horse so that it follows me. Everything is good. And then there's this carriage in the middle of the road, which I'm sure is scripted as I saw it again whenever I attempted the mission again. But I can't see the guys I'm shooting at because the carriage is so big, so I end up dying. And then I try again, I die again, and then it respawns me after that segment like I already completed it, whatever. I'm out of the range of my horse and I forget to call it again because it didn't account for the fact that I had called my horse before I died. So I go all the way to Rhodes and realize my horse ain't coming, so I try and crash the carriage to get another fail state and repeat the mission. Suddenly the carriage is indestructible. Before, the reason I failed the mission was because the guys just shot it a couple times, and I guess that was enough to fail it. Me literally crashing into objects in the city as well as just in the wilderness would not destroy the carriage, so I had to ride the carriage all the way back to a point where I can call the horse. Luckily I had level 4 bonding with my horse, so it wasn't too big of a deal. And so once I called the horse, I turned back and start riding back to Rhodes, complete the mission, just to realize that even though I got within the range of my horse, and even though Arthur didn't make his quippy comment about the horse not coming, the horse did not hear my call. So I had to steal a horse and go ride it. And you know, I'm doing a high honor playthrough, and the game kind of forces you in these positions sometimes where you're just like, screw it, you do something dishonorable by the game standards and you break your playthrough in order to get a more convenient outcome. But as I'm riding back, I get ambushed by some Lemoyne Raiders. They do the ambush where they blow up something and then it knocks you off your horse because your horse is startled, and I start fighting them, but then bounty hunters pull up, and so I'm fighting bounty hunters and Lemoyne Raiders at the same times, all while I'm just trying to get to my freaking horse. You know, I literally just rode this carriage all the way back to where I was before just to call this freaking horse because I didn't feel like running to it. So I stole a horse and I'm still trying to get the horse, but then I get ambushed, not by one party, but by two. The funny thing is though, I ended up just destroying them. This was some pretty solid gameplay, I can't even lie. And so in the end, even though it was infinitely tedious because of the chaos also lent itself to that exact moment, which led to some of the coolest gameplay I've ever had inside Red Dead 2. So yeah, the chaos is the ultimate double-edged sword of Red Dead 2 in its moment-to-moment gameplay. And that, in my eyes, makes Red Dead 2 one of the greatest masterpieces of all time, while also being one of the most flawed masterpieces of all time. And you know, a lot of the default mechanics, they're not necessarily perfect. It's one of the most imperfectly perfect games ever made, and so you find yourself modding a lot in order to accommodate for a lot of its flaws. But it never feels like you can truly perfect the game with mod combos. There's always some kind of trade-off. For example, in my mod pack, Charles Chardonnay gets this crazy glitch where his face just looks like a demon. It is horrifying, but every other aspect of the game works flawlessly. It works exactly as I want it to. You can never do too much with mods though, because you never know what other stones you may unturn within the game's code, and it is pure chaos. But that pretty much sums up my thoughts about Red Dead 2, and it's pretty much, again, imperfectly perfect. But without further ado, I'm gonna get right on into the next game. Sekiro is my third ever Souls-like. Prior to playing it, I never finished a Souls-like in my entire life. I wasn't sure how far I would get getting into it, but I still wanted it because it was Game of the Year in 2019. Everyone talked about how great it was, how hard it was, and it looked fun. But more than that, the setting really spoke to me. Now, with that being said, getting into it, I wasn't sure how far I would get. Prior to playing Sekiro, I spent about 50-ish hours in Elden Ring on the Xbox, and I felt like I accomplished nothing, mostly just running around in circles like a chicken with its head cut off. However, as it turned out, Sekiro was the only game I ever platinumed ever. Most games I don't go for the platinum because the platinum is made way too complicated to get. However, with Sekiro, it was kept simple, yet challenging, and it was a fun platinum to actually get. But getting into the actual experience I had playing it, as I stated before, I found Souls-likes intimidating, and I got stuck on Genichiro. Hell, I even got stuck on Beating Genichiro was what finally made the game click for me, and after Genichiro, the game completely opens up, and all the boss fights have a unique feel to them. Although the majority of them are perfect, some are flawed, such as the 2-ape fight and then the Demon of Hatred. Some people probably like the Demon of Hatred, but me personally, I always cheese that thing. I'm not even gonna lie, the Demon of Hatred is the antithesis of everything I love about Sekiro. If I don't outright skip it, I just cheese it. I know some people are probably not gonna like that, but it is what it is. I like Sekiro for its boss fights, which focus mostly on deflecting. The mini bosses, they can be fun, such as the samurai fights. However, the drunkard fights can be repetitive. I still enjoy them. However, there is one drunkard fight that you get whenever you do the Severance ending. That fight is a complete nightmare. And then it's followed by Owlfather, which is one of the best fights in the entire game. However, this is the one segment of the game that I still struggle with even after over 100 hours of gameplay. But yeah, setting aside the boss fights, the levels are super fun to go to. The enemies always remain in the same spot, so you can pretty much just practice it, sort of like an obstacle course. And then, you know, the boss fights are the same way. You always want to practice the boss fights, get better at them. It's just a very addicting gameplay rhythm. Rhythm is actually the word you can easily use to just summarize how Sekiro works as a whole, as pretty much every single enemy type has a rhythm to it as far as parrying, attacking, deflecting, all that stuff goes. The only real downside I can think of to Sekiro is whenever you're going for the platinum trophy, the grind can be a bit tedious to unlock all prosthetics. Same can go for the shinobi skills that you unlock with experience points. But I think the best part of Sekiro, however, is how the ending shows how far your skills progress while providing a new challenge on top of that. For those who know, they know. I'm not going to spoil it outright, but let's just say it's what takes Sekiro from a 9 out of 10 to a straight up 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And the game has a funny rep for being the hardest Souls-like, but I find it to be easy because of how simple it actually is. I feel like deflecting is a much simpler mechanic than dodging, and then directional movement on top of that dodging, because in Elden Ring, for example, you're doing the same thing. You're timing your dodges, but you also have to decide which direction you're dodging, and if you choose the wrong one, you're gonna come out of that dodge straight into getting hit. So in my opinion, I think Sekiro is far easier than the other Souls games. I think that the number one reason Sekiro gets a rep as being the hardest is because it's so different from the other Souls games that when people go and play it, they get surprised because they're expecting it to just be something where you can just dodge, but dodging is a very inefficient way to play this game. It's just not ideal. There's a couple enemies where dodging is actually the meta, you know, that's what you want to do, but those aren't exactly the most popular fights either. I mean, Demon of Hatred is definitely one of them. Like I said, I personally don't like the Demon of Hatred since it is such a dodge focused boss fight. Same thing goes for the golems, or honestly I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. I'll just include a visual of what they are in the video. But yeah, that pretty much concludes my thoughts on Sekiro. In short, it's pretty much just because of the addicting gameplay loop and then the ending. The ending was just so well made that it brought the whole game to an entirely different level. But with that pretty much concludes this segment. And that's actually where I'm going to leave off for this video. I know I featured a lot of games in the thumbnail for it, and I hope I didn't disappoint anybody with that. However, the scope of this video, if I did include all those games, would have been diabolical. And since I am just getting started off, I want to have some kind of consistency with my uploads. So with that being said, I might be doing more parts of this just to feature more games from that thumbnail. You know, just to fully realize the vision I had for this video. It's definitely not something I can make in one video either way. I think if I try to make it in one video, it would probably go up to 30 minutes, and as it stands now, the 15 minutes that this video went for took me almost an entire week to completely edit and put together. But my goal with this video was successful. I ended up getting a lot better at my editing. You can actually see that with each game that I covered, my editing got a little bit better. to the point where, you know, I'm actually like editing at a level I've never edited at before. However, that's also just because I really put the time in. My goal going forward is going to be to edit to the standard that I've reached in this video as much as possible so that I get good at it and then go from there. So yeah, if you guys support this journey, if you guys like this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.